On a quiet afternoon, an elderly black woman stood alone on a sidewalk, holding nothing but a small grocery bag and the dignity of a life she had lived quietly for decades. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't resisting. But across the street, a police officer made a decision that would change everything in an instant. With a single command, he ordered his canine forward. People nearby froze, expecting the worst. The dog sprinted toward her, trained for one thing: attack. But what happened in the next few seconds stunned everyone watching. The officer wasn't prepared for it. The crowd wasn't prepared for it. And the moment that followed would leave a question echoing far beyond that street. Because sometimes, even a trained police dog can see something a human chooses not to. So why did the dog refuse to do what it was ordered to do? For more than 70 years, Evelyn Carter had lived a quiet, steady life in the same neighborhood she had called home since she was a young woman. The small brick house at the end of Maple Street held decades of memories: family dinners, Sunday mornings in pressed church clothes, and the slow, familiar rhythm of a life built on patience and resilience. Most afternoons followed the same simple routine. Evelyn would walk a few blocks to the corner store, pick up a few groceries, and make her way back home at an unhurried pace. The neighbors knew her well. Some waved from their porches, others offered a quick hello as she passed. She never expected trouble. But on that particular afternoon, something felt different. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the street, its engine humming as it crept closer. At first, Evelyn didn't pay much attention. Police cars passed through the neighborhood all the time. Then the cruiser stopped. The officer inside stepped out, his gaze fixed on her in a way that made the air feel suddenly heavier. A trained canine waited beside him, alert and tense, its eyes locked forward. Evelyn stood there, confused, clutching her small grocery bag. She hadn't done anything wrong. But the way the officer looked at her made it clear something was about to happen. And within seconds, a single command would turn an ordinary afternoon into a moment no one on that street would ever forget. The officer's voice cut through the quiet street like a blade. It wasn't loud, but it carried authority, the kind that made people stop without thinking. Evelyn Carter turned slowly, her eyes searching the officer's face for some kind of explanation. The grocery bag in her hand rustled softly as it shifted against her coat. For a moment, no one spoke. The officer's gaze moved from her face to the bag she was holding, then back again. His expression was hard, suspicious, as if he were looking at someone dangerous instead of a 73-year-old woman standing alone on a sidewalk. Neighbors began to notice. A man watering his lawn paused mid-spray. A woman across the street pulled back her curtain just enough to see what was happening. The tension on the block thickened with every passing second. The officer stepped closer. Beside him, the canine stiffened, its muscles tight beneath its dark coat. The dog's ears were alight, its eyes fixed on Evelyn with trained focus. Evelyn's heart began to pound. She had seen enough stories on the news to know how quickly moments like this could spiral out of control. Her mind raced through every possibility, trying to understand why she was suddenly the center of this confrontation. But there was nothing to explain. She hadn't stolen anything. She hadn't argued with anyone. She had simply walked to the store. The officer spoke again, his tone sharper now, cutting through the air. Evelyn froze. The street had gone eerily quiet. Even the distant sound of traffic seemed to fade as the situation tightened like a coiled spring. The officer's hand moved toward the canine's harness. That single movement made several people nearby shift nervously. One neighbor stepped a little closer to the curb, sensing that something about this situation felt wrong. The dog leaned forward, ready. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the grocery bag. Inside, a carton of eggs pressed against a loaf of bread. Such ordinary things for such an ordinary afternoon. But suddenly, nothing felt ordinary anymore. The officer's posture changed, his body angling slightly as if preparing for something decisive. Then came the command. Short, cold, final. The dog launched forward. Gasps echoed from the porches and sidewalks. Someone dropped something that clattered loudly onto the pavement. Evelyn didn't run. She simply stood there, frozen, the fear rising in her chest as a powerful animal rushed toward her with terrifying speed. The distance between them vanished in seconds. Everyone watching expected the same outcome, the one these dogs were trained for. Attack. The dog closed in, its paws striking the pavement, its body moving with precision and strength. But just as it reached Evelyn, something unexpected happened. The dog slowed, its stride broke, and in that strange, suspended moment, when everyone was bracing for violence, the animal did something that left the entire street staring in disbelief. Even the officer hadn't seen it coming. The dog was only a few feet away when everything changed. Instead of lunging, the powerful canine slowed to a sudden stop right in front of Evelyn Carter. Its paws scraped against the pavement as it halted, its body tense but strangely calm. For a moment, the entire street seemed to freeze. Evelyn stood there, her heart racing, expecting teeth, force, pain, everything she had seen in countless news reports. But the dog didn't attack. Instead, it lowered its head. The animal sniffed the air cautiously, cycling once around her trembling frame. The grocery bag slipped slightly in Evelyn's shaking hand as she struggled to understand what was happening. The officer's voice cut across the silence again, sharper this time. Another command. The dog didn't move. A ripple of murmurs spread through the small crowd that had gathered. Phones were raised now. Cameras recording. Eyes wide with disbelief. The officer shouted again, his frustration spilling into the open. Still, the dog refused. Instead of aggression, the animal did something no one expected. It stepped closer to Evelyn and gently sat down beside her, its tail tapping softly against the pavement. A quiet gasp moved through the onlookers. Evelyn looked down, confused, as the dog glanced up at her, not with the cold precision of a trained attack animal, but with something calmer, almost protective. The officer's face tightened with anger. This wasn't how the moment was supposed to unfold. He tugged the leash sharply, trying to pull the dog back into position. But the animal resisted, its body planted firmly beside the elderly woman. The tension in the street was no longer just fear, it was realization. Everyone watching could see it now. The dog had been given a clear command, and it had chosen not to obey. For the first time since the confrontation began, the officer looked uncertain. Because now dozens of eyes, and dozens of cameras, were watching a moment that couldn't be easily explained. And in that silent standoff, one uncomfortable question began to spread through the crowd. If even the trained dog refused to see this woman as a threat, why did the officer? The street stayed silent for a long moment. Eventually, the officer pulled the dog away, his commands now quieter, more controlled. The canine finally stood, but it kept glancing back at Evelyn as if reluctant to leave her side. The tension that had filled the block slowly dissolved into murmurs, disbelief, and the soft sound of phones lowering as the moment ended. Evelyn Carter was still standing where it had all begun. Her hands trembled as she held the grocery bag close to her chest. The eggs inside were cracked now, the carton damp and fragile, small proof of how quickly an ordinary afternoon had been shattered. Neighbors stepped closer, asking if she was all right. Some looked angry, others simply looked shaken. Because everyone had seen it. A woman who had done nothing wrong had been treated like a threat in her own neighborhood. And yet, the only one who seemed to recognize her harmlessness in that moment was the dog. Evelyn eventually walked home the same way she had hundreds of times before, but the street felt different now. The air carried the weight of what could have happened, and how close it came to becoming another headline. For the people who witnessed it, the image stayed with them, an elderly woman standing alone, and a trained police dog refusing to harm her. Sometimes injustice is loud and obvious. Other times, it reveals itself in quiet moments that force people to confront uncomfortable truths. Because if even an animal could pause, observe, and choose not to see danger where there was none, what does it say about the choices humans make? Stories like Evelyn's don't just disappear. They spread, they spark conversations, they force communities to look closer at the systems meant to protect them. And maybe the most important question isn't what the dog did that day. Maybe it's this. Why did compassion come from the one creature that was trained not to question orders,